Hi everyone, so in this video I'm going to be going over our functions quiz review document. So let's start with number 1. It says, which of the following tables represents a function? Highlight the letter, or if you print it out you can circle the letter. So we know that something is not a function if the x values repeat. Okay, so we need to look at the x values for each of these tables. I'm just circling them because that is all you really need to pay attention to. Okay, so with A, we only have -2 as our value, so obviously since it repeats, A does not work. All right, let's look at B. B, we have +1, +2, -3, -1. Okay, that one works, but sometimes us algebra teachers, we're a little tricky, so let's check to make sure to see if anything else works. For C, 3 repeats, so nope, that's not a function. And then for D, -1 repeats, so nope, that's not a function. So when looking at a graph, in order to determine if it's a function or not without given any other information, we need to do the vertical line test. So I'm just going to write that off to the side, vertical line test. If it fails, then no, it's not a function. If it passes, then yes, it is a function. All right, so right here off to the left, I have my blue vertical line. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this across the graph. And immediately you should notice that and I'm going to draw this. So for example, at these 2 points, the vertical line hits the graph twice. So therefore it is not a function. So A does not work. Okay, so now let's try out the second graph. So we're to bring this blue line across the graph. At no time does this graph, this function that kind of looks like a check mark, does it hit 2 points at one time. So therefore, this is a function. So I'm going to circle this in green. And then now let's try the next one. So now I'm going to use the vertical line and go across. And the same thing with this one. At no point does the function hit this blue line twice at one time. Therefore, this is also a function. However, let's look at the question that we're being asked. It says, which of the following is not a function of x? So therefore, A is going to be your answer because it is not a function. So at the end of the day, I would want to make sure that I circle A because that is not a function. All right, so for the next few questions, we're going to talk about domain and range. For number 3, it's asking, what is the domain of the following relation? Okay, so first you need to make sure that you draw the braces. And then the domain is the x values. So we need to write each of the x values. However, we do need to make sure that we're writing them in ascending order. So from least to greatest. Okay, we don't need to put any parentheses in. We just need to separate them by commas. So our smallest value is -5, then -1, then +5, and +8. And then I put the braces afterwards. Now this one is asking for the range, so this is asking for the y values. Okay, so I'm going to circle the y values, so I have 2, 5, 1, and 4. Again, I want to make sure I have these braces, and then I want to put them in ascending order, so from least to greatest. So I have 1, 2, 4, and 5. So number 5 asks, what is the domain and range of the relation graphed? Okay, so when I am looking at the domain, let's start with the domain first. I'm going to do this in blue. I need to look from left to right. Okay, so I'm going to look at the points on my graph and go from left to right. I hit a point at -1 because there's 2 here, as you can see at -1. However, I'm only going to write -1 twice. When we write our domain and range, we only want to write it once. I don't know if I said that earlier. I might have misspoke, but we only want to write it once. We don't want to write it twice. Then I'm going to keep going, and I also hit a point at 2. So I'm going to write +2. So that is my domain. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our range. So when we look at our range, we want to make sure we go from bottom to top. I'm doing this in red, and we want to do that because, again, we're still writing this in ascending order. So we want to start with the negatives and then end with the positives. So when I go from bottom to top, first I hit -5 because there's a point here. Then I hit -2 because there's a point right here. Then I keep going and I hit 0 because there's a point right here and the y value is 0. Okay, so there is my domain and my range. Number 6 is asking us, is the relation from number 5 a function? And if you would have tried to do the vertical line test with this, you would have realized that this is not a function, and that's because there were 2 of one x value. So an x value repeated, therefore it's not a function. Number 7, given the set of ordered pairs, for what values can x not be in order for the relation to be a function? Okay, again, this is just making sure that you know the definition of a function. So it's asking about this x. So in order for this to be a function, x could not be 1, x could not be -2, and x could not be +3, because then we would have a repeating number and then it would not be a function. So those are the 3 numbers that it cannot be. All right, so next we're moving on to function notation. Number 8 asks, if f of x equals x squared minus 5, find f of -2. Okay, so we're going to plug this in and use the order of operations. So we're going to plug in -2 for x. When you plug that in, you're going to get a +4. So 4 minus 5. And so that means that f of -2 is -1. That's our answer. Okay, so number 9 is one of those questions that has like multiple questions within it. So it's asking, what is the range of the function if f of x is -2x squared plus 2x plus 3 when the domain is -1, 0, and 1. So what we need to do is we need to plug in these domain values and see what range values we get. We need to do it one at a time. So first we're going to start off with the -1. So we have -2, -1 squared plus 2, -1 plus 3. Okay, we got to do our exponent first. -1 times -1 is +1. All right. Okay, so now we have -2 times +1, that's -2. Again, +2 times -1, that's -2. And then we have +3. If you wanted to switch this around, you could, because it might be a little bit confusing. So keep it, switch it, switch it. So -2 minus 2 is going to give me -4 plus 3 is going to give me -1. So right now my first range value is -1. Now let's go ahead and try plugging in 0. So now in red we're going to do 0, so plugging in . So 0 squared gives me 0, so I have 0 times -2. I did not plug in my 0 earlier, that's okay. Okay guys, you should realize that these zeros are gonna like cancel out. This is gonna give us 0 and 0. So our answer for when we have a range of 2, when we have a domain of 0, we're gonna have a range of 3. Sorry about that. All right, so lastly, I'm going to do this last domain in green. And so we're going to plug in 1 for our x value. So we have negative 2 times 1 squared plus 2 times 1 plus 3. Okay, we got to do the exponent first. Okay, so now we are going to have negative 2 plus positive 2 plus 3. That is going to give us 3. Okay, so we have 3 twice for our range. However, we only need to write it once. So our range is negative 1 and 3. All right, so we're going to do another one with function notation. This one's a little different. It tells us g of x equals 2x minus 5. We're finding x and we're given the y value. So what we need to do is write negative 11 on one side of the equal sign and then write the rule on the other side and solve for x. So we're going to add 5 to both sides. When we do that, we're going to get negative 6 equals 2x. So we're going to divide by 2, and so x is equal to negative 3. Okay, so negative 3 is our answer for that one. All right, so for 11, 12, and 13, we're going to use the graph to help us answer these questions. The first one is asking f of 1 equals what? So when x equals 1, what does y equal? So 1 is right here for our x values. So we are going to look up or down on the graph. And if you see the graph, if we go down, this is our y value when x is 1. So this is negative 1. So f of 1 is negative 1. For this next one, it says find x when f of x equals 3. So for this one, it's telling us our y value and it wants to know what the x is. Okay, so our y-axis goes top to bottom, north to south. And so I'm going to find positive 3. Here's positive 3. And now I need to look from left to right to see if I have an x value for my graph. And I do. I have one right here. Okay, so this is at negative 1 for x. Okay, so when y is 3, our x is going to be x equals negative 1. All right, so this last question is asking what is f of 1 plus f of negative 1? Basically, we need to find the y values and add them together. So f of 1, so that's when x is 1. When x is 1, our y is negative 1. Okay, so now I'm going to use green to show you this f of negative 1. So when our x is negative 1, our y value, sorry, that's not a straight line, our y value is positive 3. Okay, so with this question, we're doing negative 1 plus 3, and that's going to give you positive 2. All right, so thanks for watching this video. Feel free to reach out to your teacher if you need any more help on functions.